Welcome, Abhishek, to OMSC's Roundtable, where we highlight scholars and students of world Christianity. Here at Overseas Ministry Study Center, this new Roundtable Media Initiative we are aiming to highlight some of the works that students and scholars are doing in world Christianity and mission studies, and it is a pleasure to have you join us today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Byung-ho.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Thank you. As I mentioned, we are trying to highlight students and scholars of world Christianity. We will want to focus our attention to you and learn more about who you are, your background as well. So as we start off our conversation today, do you mind sharing with us your academic background, your academic journey, where you began your studies, and where are you currently doing your doctoral studies at right now? Yeah.
Sure. I did my bachelor's in theology and bachelor's in divinity in South India, Kerala, and my master's in theology in the northeastern part of India called Mizoram. I also did a master's in ecumenical studies at the University of Geneva. After which now I am at Boston University School of Theology. I'm in the PhD program in the fourth year. In the historical studies track, and I'm working with Dr. Dana Robert.
Wonderful. It's quite interesting, the journey you took from India to Geneva to the United States, and it's wonderful to have you join us here in America to see your work being done, the progress that you've been making. It's amazing. And I'm wondering, while you are at Boston University School of Theology, what were some of the courses that you enjoyed taking, or some of the teaching assistant opportunities that you were able to learn from, or even projects that you were kind of engaged with? I know you were engaged with the Center for Global Christianity and Mission. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well.
So, sure. Prior to coming to the U.S., I did have the honor and the opportunity to teach at a seminary where I was very much into topics and classes on mission studies, on church history, Indian church history. But coming to BU, my scope of teaching has expanded substantially. A lot of classes that I have been a part of have been on Christian mission, on history, African Christianity, history of Asian Christianity, and right now I'm in a course that spans 2,000 years of history. The course is titled Mediterranean Antiquity to Modern Asia. This is a co-taught course with two professors and the two teaching fellows. It's so amazing to see professors from different disciplines, or more like different historical periods, engaging together. So I've been really lucky to be part of such courses where that has spanned Latin American Christianity, Asian Christianity, African Christianity, and also a course on world Christianity. It is so amazing to be part of these courses and to see how these dialogues really play out. In terms of research, I was a part of the Center for Global Christianity and Mission. I was a research assistant for at least 2 years. A lot of my work was around promoting events that the center would have, particularly Eastern Fellowship of Professors of Mission, or events like that. One of the research work I'm doing right now is on the sanctuary movement. I'm working with two professors actually, who are very interested in the sanctuary movement in Boston, and especially in New England. And I'm lucky to be able to look at the archives, look at the documents. So that has been very amazing to look into these documents.
Wonderful. It's fascinating that, whether we are in Boston or here in Princeton, we're also continuing to engage not only within our own academic institutions, but with centers, being involved with a variety of research. And the research that you're involved with, it sounds very fascinating and very important.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, segueing into outside of these institutional obligations, I would like to learn more about some of the writings that you've been doing as a doctoral student as well. Do you want to share anything about the recent publication that you might have done? Whether it's a journal article or a book chapter or whatever, would you like to share something about
Yeah.
that?
I would definitely want to share about an exciting article that I wrote, and I got it published in a new theological college journal, which is in North India. The article was basically my curiosity about one man whose name was John J. Sudasan Cornelius. I stumbled upon his name in a class with Dr. Dana Robert, who is my advisor, and while in a class with her, I found this name, and I started looking into him, and I found that a lot of sources or books that I was reading kept calling him as a friend of Mahatma Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's economist, and I was like, really? And I started looking into the archives, and I found that he is not Mahatma Gandhi's friend. He is a younger brother to Mahatma Gandhi's friend. So his elder brother, Joseph Kumarappa, J.C. Kumarappa, was actually Mahatma Gandhi's friend. And this younger brother was actually in the US. He did his studies at Harvard. He also did his study at Boston University and wrote his dissertation at Columbia University.
Wow.
And the dissertation is still available in the archives. This man was an ecumenist, definitely a nationalist, but a very internationalist in terms of engaging with, in terms of how India is seen in the American public life. New York Times featured him, talking to him about what does the East have to contribute to the West? Right. And back in the 1920s, it was always the West and the East, right? And in that conversation, John J. Sudasan Cornelius stands out. So what really happened to him after? History is silent. I couldn't find many resources, but I feel that I at least had made the contribution of taking him out of the shadows of his elder brother and bringing him to and saying, no, this is an identity of his own, a very Indian nationalist in an American setting, making the case for India's contribution to mission, India's place in the world stage.
Wow. Sounds like you're doing really a work of a historian, right? In kind of shedding light on kind of the misconceptions or things that have been glossed over throughout history. So it's a fascinating project. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind me asking also, I remember that this article is not published in English, but was it published in a different language as well?
No, it was published in English.
In English. Yes. Okay, of course. So whoever is interested can also have access and read more about it. Of course. Good. Thank you for clarifying that as well. Now, regardless of our work, again, in the institution and our writings and journal articles, but as doctoral students, our sole focus should be dissertation projects, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which I would love to hear more about your dissertation project. What kind of theme or context you're dealing with? What is the methodology that you employ? And kind of what is the main argument that you're trying to make in your work? Do you mind sharing something about that?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
I was a part of the Evangelical Fellowship of India before I began my PhD program. Being in the Evangelical Fellowship of India, in that institution, a curiosity that really hit me was, how did the Evangelical Fellowship of India came to be, what it was all about? And so my dissertation is focused on the rise of Indian evangelicalism in the mid-20th century. I'm looking at transnationality of the evangelical movement. I'm looking at how American evangelicals, and when I say American evangelicals, I'm saying particularly the National Association of Evangelicals, or as some historians call them, neo-evangelicals, or some might even call them Billy evangelicals. You can choose what you want to call them. But it is the National Association of Evangelicals, two officers of the NAE in 1950, Clyde Taylor and John Elvin Wright, came to India for a whole month. They traveled around the country met a lot of evangelical leaders and basically mobilized them to form an evangelical institution,
Right.
more like a fellowship. And 1951, an evangelical resurgence takes place. This is in the context of post-war. This is in the context of a lot of criticism that the ecumenical movement is facing, that they have given up on evangelism of the world, they have gone to social justice, all of that. And within that focus, evangelicals are saying the gospel needs to be preached, the evangelization of the world. So I'm looking at how transnationality of evangelicalism, local as well as global, how American evangelicals involve in India, and how Indian evangelicals also involve in American evangelicalism.
Right.
Although the power difference is pretty, dominating on one side, but Indian evangelicals definitely start playing a role. And by 1974, which is when my dissertation ends, and the Lausanne Congress happens, I see a list of names of Indian evangelical leaders who have now started to become very prominent, who are writing, who are leading. So this dissertation is a historical investigation. It's also a missiological investigation. And what I try to do is I take 3 case studies of the Evangelical Fellowship of India and their archival materials, newspapers, news magazines, newsletters. I also look at Indian Evangelical Mission, which is an offshoot of EFI, which is the missionary body of EFI, in a sense. And I also look at Operation Mobilization, which was founded by George Verwer. And George Verwer became a Christian, dedicated himself to mission at a Billy Graham rally. So there are connections, a lot of connections in how Indian evangelicalism turns out. I'm also looking at Billy Graham's visits to India beginning in 1956, how he travels around the country. So in all of this, in summary, what I'm looking at is how transnational ideas, how global evangelicalism plays out in a local context, and how local Indians figure the best way to take those transnational American ideas and bring it to the local context of India.
That's fascinating because as we are in world Christianity, there are many cases where we find similarities taking place in one context to a different context. And this evangelicalism and this whole evangelical movement, we see that also in Korea post-World War II.
Right.
So I see a lot of familiarity when you're talking about that. I'm thinking about how Billy Graham also came to Korea and also the influences that Korea also had in American evangelicalism as well. So I'm thinking about that. But one thing I think we had in our private conversation was also Indian influence in the West, in America, and also how I think you mentioned somebody that also participated in the Billy Graham, worship. I would say conferences as well. But do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, definitely. Well, my research has just started. I still need to delve more, find out more people. But one name did come out, Akbar Haq, who is an Indian evangelist. He starts to show up in Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. He's of the BGA team. And BGA team, as you might know, used to have speakers. And he's one of the speakers. And I was watching this video on YouTube, which is very publicly accessible, of Billy Graham about to preach, but before he steps on the stage in front of the pulpit, he asks Akbar Haq to take the pulpit and talk and bring a message from India. And Akbar Haq, in his simple, beautiful English, brings a message of greetings. He talks about India, and that gives me the idea that I do not know what influence Indian evangelicalism at this point is playing on American evangelicalism, which could be very minimal. But there is this idea of this new evangelicalism, which is very pulpit-centered, which is gospel crusades. You see an Indian name, an Indian person who is showing up and bringing messages. And that also played out in Operation Mobilization. I need to add that here because a lot of Westerners would travel to India and form short-term mission trips. Today we call them short-term mission trips. Nobody called them that in the 1960s. And a lot of Westerners would come to India And a lot of evangelism that they would do was with Indians. They would have truckloads full of literature, gospel literature, travel the length and breadth of the country. There were Westerners in the truck. There were Swedish, the British, the Americans. There were Indians, both men and women in different trucks, traversing the length and breadth of the country. And I didn't say this before, but this research is also very personal to me. My mother was in the Operation Mobilization.
Oh, wow.
And one of her best friends was an American woman. This was in her late teens. She still talks about her.
Wow.
I do not know where she is, but my mom does talk about her. So this very fascinating evangelicalism, which was committed to evangelism of whether India, the evangelism of the world, but it was very friendship oriented, where people would come to know each other from very different global contexts, live together, but committed to this task. So I'm trying to look at this evangelicalism in the mid-20th century, transnational friendships, transnational ideas, transnational resources. Yes.
Well, hearing you talk about your dissertation project, I can see the spark in your eyes.
Thank you.
And I've been talking to many fellow friends who are pursuing doctoral degrees in world Christianity, and a lot of times I hear this echo of how they got to do this project, and it's because of personal connections.
That's right.
This personal journey, this personal intimate relationship with the materials that they're engaging with. So it's great to hear about that personal story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and look forward to reading more of your work later on when it's completed. Now, we want to segue towards the last portion of our conversation today, and it's just picking your brain, your personal thoughts about the state and the future of world Christianity, and that is, what are some of the challenges that you faced as a doctoral student within world Christianity as you conducted your research? What are some obstacles, some challenges?
Right. One of the challenges I faced as an Indian student, being in a Western academic environment, ecosystem, was the accessibility to resources. As a historian, my need is archives. I need to look into the archives. It's a boring work to some. To me, it's like, fixing a puzzle. It's like solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like taking different elements and figuring them out. But unfortunately, some of the puzzles may not be in the geographical location you are in. So you got to find where else is this puzzle.
Yeah.
You visit archives and you figure out, okay, I found something here, but it doesn't have everything I need. So I got to go to this archives.
Yeah.
I've been lucky to be able to visit some archives in the US, but I do think some materials exist even in India.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges is to the geographical expansiveness of and the distance between archives, and to be able to go use them and then bring this material together.
Of course.
So, and the other aspect of it is also that you go to an archive and realize you did so much work, but nothing was important, nothing was needed. So sometimes you do travel very far and find nothing. So those challenges exist. But again, if you want to do some historical work, that's something that you have to take the risk for.
Of course, and I echo what you said in terms of, doing world Christianity in a Western context where we do world Christianity, we dive into Christianity that is outside of global North, right? We go into the global South, and which takes us into journeys where, for you, India, for myself, Indonesia.
Right.
And yeah, it's the financial aspect is also sometimes a hurdle.
Oh yeah.
The expansiveness, as you mentioned, is a hurdle too. But yeah, thank you for sharing some of that, some of your thoughts on that. But my second question to that was, as you're also conducting research, what do you think is missing, or what do you think needs to be talked about more in our field of world Christianity? I know many have talked about world Christianity. Sometimes it may be too contextual, or maybe sometimes it may be, we might lack a little bit of a theory or methodology. But yeah, I wanted to pick your brain about what you think should be discussed more within our field. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, it's an ongoing conversation, and it's such a blessing to be at this World Christianity Conference at Princeton Seminary, to be able to listen to so many scholars. Two books that come to my mind are Joel Cabrita and David Maxwell's Relocating World Christianity, and Martha Frederick's Methodological Considerations for World Christianity. Both of these books are, I would say, and more are coming out, and there's so much literature coming out. But these books have kind of helped my curiosity to figure out what really is world Christianity. What is the methodological approach of this thing that we are doing? It might be very clear in other people's mind. To me, it was not. These books helped me. These books helped me in my own personal journey to figure out what is this world Christianity approach. Particularly looking at Joel Cabrita's book on relocating world Christianity. They have edited the book. Several authors have contributed, particularly Wesley Aryaraja's article on a world theology, a need of a world theology. And Aryaraja is basically talking about how we live in religious diversity, how there are other religions that live around us. And it's a reality for many of us in Asia who live in countries that have other religions around us. So in the as much as we talk about the contextual part of world Christianity and this local limiting part, local studies part of world Christianity, a lot of us want to do a local and global conversation and this interplay between local and global. And that does make a lot of sense. And The Missionary's Curse comes to my mind, another book that has stories from a Chinese village, but is also connected to the larger Catholicism. Those are amazing studies. But I also want to say that we live in contexts that have other religions at hand. So a world Christianity conversation should also take into account world religion conversation, where other world religions exist, particularly Chandra Mallampalli's book on South Asia's Christians, between Muslims and Hindus, Islam and Hinduism, which is amazing because that book is doing a very historical study of Indian Christianity, but it is placing it in conversation with two other major world religions.
Of course.
I do not know how the methodological approach will look like in terms of how does a local Christianity engage with a global Christianity and also engage with global religions and local religions, and what approach seems to be the best. But I do see a lot of hope because world Christianity is no more just a mission study or a historical work, but it's starting to be several disciplines are starting to engage anthropology, sociology, and I do think it has to be multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those thoughts. And I, again, totally echo and support what you are saying. We need to engage more with other religions, especially when we dive into contexts where Christianity might not have been the dominant religion. When Christianity came on the backs of missionaries or even colonialism. Yeah, so I think it's very important for us to continue to think and imagine also how we can engage further, how we can expand our thoughts about world Christianity and more. So thank you so much, Abhishek. The final question that I like to ask my guest here on the roundtable is an impromptu question. The question is, could you fill out the rest of the sentence? And that is, I'm asking you, world Christianity is, and then what comes to mind? Can you fill out that rest of that sentence in one sentence or two? It doesn't have to, you don't have to draw it from a book.
Okay.
It's just coming naturally. What comes to mind as we are having this discussion for the past several minutes? World Christianity is...
Yes. That is a difficult question to answer.
There is no right or wrong, Abhishek.
But of course,
okay,
yes.
Yeah.
But this is what comes to my mind. World Christianity is an approach that might be benefited a lot, as a methodological approach, benefited a lot if the conversation happens globally, in global institutions. I do have a footnote to that.
Yes, please.
And the footnote is simply, world Christianity or global Christianity approach or methodology has not found enough friends, enough supporters, enough fans.
Yeah.
Let's say in India. It's an approach somehow has not infiltrated the scholarship in India.
Yeah.
And the question I'm asking is why? If it is a world Christianity approach, whose approach is it? Is it Western academia looking at the expansion of global Christianity in global South? It will reach its culmination, I would say, when the global South engages in the conversation in their scholarship and say, yes, we see West as also a part of world Christianity.
Perfect. That is a wonderful answer, and I again support your answer. Again, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful to get to know about you, your thoughts about world Christianity, and also your dissertation project. So many blessings to you as you finish out your doctorate program at Boston University. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Byung Ho, for this time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.